I've just moved the Goat A3000 into the place of honor. It's going to take over primary cutting duties for my yard. The Orion X7 previously held this spot and it performed quite well. The only thing that was holding it back is Sunseeker provided that mower for me for testing and review. They gave me the base model because I have a relatively large yard. It had a hard time keeping up with things because of the battery size and the charge speed. That is not the case with the A3000 and the A2500 for that matter. The batteries are significantly larger, improving cut time. In addition to charge time being much reduced, basically they provide a larger charging brick or power supply. So this thing recharges in 45 minutes. That, along with the increased cut speed, allows this thing to basically get my yard cut in a day, which the X7 took 2.5–3 days to get the entire yard. Hard to keep up when it gets warmer in summer and we get a lot of rain. So that's why switching to the Goat. Now, one complication with moving the charging station around, I had another area so that the Orion could stay here and continue normal cutting duties as I reviewed and tested the Goat. The charging station is obviously located on the map. I don't find any options to relocate the charging station, so I think I'm gonna have to recreate the entire map here. Kind of a pain, but worth it in this particular case, where cut time is so significantly reduced with this mower. It's worth that little bit of pain. Just got back late last night, real early yesterday morning. The yard is a mess. So we're gone for a week on a beach vacation down the Panhandle of Florida. It was very hot here in central Wisconsin, into the 90s Fahrenheit. That's very hot for here. And the LiDAR sensor overheated on our Goat 3000. So it wasn't mowing, and these robot mowers are very good at maintaining the lawn. But once it gets like this, it's having a bit of a trouble. So I have not changed over the lawnmower blades. We're gonna swap those over to a fresh cutting edge and see if that helps. But we can see here, it's not looking so hot.
Sensor on the top.
Overall, it's pretty.
Tilting. Please protect the sensor on the top.
We'll just turn this off.
Goat tilting. Please protect the sensor on the top.
Overall, it's pretty clean under here. Nice, simple, open design. We don't have a lot of space for grass to build up. It does on the cutting blades itself, but they're all in the L position, so that's not a big deal. We've got 2 cutting surfaces on every one of these blades. So all we have to do remove a blade. We can see there it is quite worn on the current cutting edge. And simply flip it over and reinstall it. So you get two cutting edges on this. Maybe a little bit of a difference, but it's still pretty unruly. What the problem is, I believe, we can see as this mower is coming along, that front bumper is pretty low. We can see grass caught on it, and it's laying the grass down before the cutting discs get to engage it. So that's not too bad, but we can see the amount laid down there. You know, and there's a lot of missed grass. So what I have here is mostly Kentucky bluegrass, which is a medium bladed grass. That's important because that's the strength at which it stands up with. And robot mowers struggle with this at large cut heights because there's no airflow to suck those blades of grass up to get them to engage with the mower blade. Conventional lawnmowers all have that fin at the back of the mower blade, which is called a lift. The higher that fin on the back, the more lift, the more airflow you get. Doesn't work with mulching, that's a whole different thing. But if you're bagging or side discharging, one of the reasons that cuts better, and I've got a whole video on this, is the airflow and that lift pulling that grass up. If you have a high sun area, generally the grass is going to be a little bit stiffer, a little bit healthier, and stand up more firm. So this might not be a problem if you have a high sun area, but you can see I've got a pretty good canopy, so that tends to make the grass a little spindlier, a little thinner, and it just does not stand up very strongly. So that limits basically what the cut height I can use here. I'm cutting at 3.2 inches, the second to highest setting on this particular mower, and it's really just not a good match for this kind of lawn with this amount of sun. I'm gonna let it finish at this and then do subsequent mowings. I'm gonna try to get back to 2 3/4, 2.5 inches where I normally cut it. That provides a much cleaner cut. At that height, the grass can stand up better, and the mower's not laying it down before it has a chance to engage those cutting discs. Whew, still pretty rough. I'll have to cut again for sure, at least one more time. Took 3 mow jobs, finally got this back under control. Yeah, not ideal, but ideally you keep your mower going every other day, and this is never an issue. But in an instance where you're gone and you have a malfunction, you can recover, but it's kind of a painful process. I changed directions every time to crisscross. You can see I do have clippings. It's not too out of control, not ideal. Still a few spots that got laid over a little bit, but at least it's back under control. I've been living with the A3000 as my primary mower about 3.5, 4 weeks now, and it's going quite well, and things have actually improved in the last week. ECOVACS pushed an update for this, which has improved, I believe, the obstacle avoidance. So before, it would get a decent amount of false negatives or think there's something blocking the cutting path when indeed there was nothing there, or it was grass or something like that. So that would cause it to turn around and miss a path. Now, it didn't really miss that path, it just put that aside and then came back last and did that. So overall, your grass would be fully cut and it would look good, but it just took longer than necessary, and the pattern didn't look as good as if it completed full paths all the time. So you can see here, much different. We've got a nice complete path in most all scenarios, and has virtually eliminated those false positives for obstacles. Rained quite a bit in the last couple days, so we're a little bit delayed in this particular cutting, and it still is a little bit wet. So we've got cut grass streaks here, or piles, or stripes, if we want to call it that. Not too bad. This is acceptable in my opinion. Not ideal. Ideally we would have cut yesterday and there'd be less growth, so we wouldn't have that, but still does a good job at this level cutting. We're not missing grass, things like that. Where if we delay a week or 5 days in this middle of August high growth rate for our northern grasses, it creates a mess like we showed before. Now, one of the things I noticed in the update, there is what they call enhanced mode to try to handle those taller grass situations, because that was one of the problems I had after vacation and the mower wasn't running, is that the obstacle avoidance would go off all the time because the grass was so high. So that is now another cut mode that you can have. We'll test that out on another area. I let grow a little bit with all this rain, so we'll see if that takes care of that area. Here's the area I'm talking about. It's the same one as before. I let it get beyond the height where I normally cut. We'll see if that enhanced mode helps us recover this in one mowing instead of 2 or 3. Just to touch on why it wasn't cutting, and I mentioned that the LiDAR system overheated. So right in the instructions in the app, it tells you above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which doesn't happen here very often, the laser in that LiDAR system can overheat. Basically, it's a laser system shooting out and measuring distances. So if you live in a very hot weather location, I wouldn't recommend a LiDAR mower because that system is just going to overheat on you consistently. Here in central Wisconsin, we had 1 week, and really it was probably 3 or 4 days where we were up into the 90s and it just wouldn't mow. Now, the way this works, if you get that air and you're gone, you can't really do much about it, and you can't continue mowing because you have to physically press the buttons on the mower itself to reset that air. So that was the only thing that really held me back. If I were home, I would have just reset the mower on top, basically just press mow OK, and it clears that air. But because I wasn't home, I wasn't able to clear it and get it mowing again. All right, we've got it enhanced mode. Obviously, this is taller than normal grass. It is doing a little bit better than it did after we came home from vacation, tried to recover that. It's probably going to need 2 mows to get it back, but it's still not quite perfect. We can take a look at the map here, and what I mean by not quite perfect is it's seeing obstacles that aren't really there and turning around and missing parts, and it's going to come back after the fact and get those missed parts, but it just takes more time. And then you run out of daylight hours or hours where the grass isn't wet where it can effectively cut. Still very happy with the A3000. Again, you just have to use it for maintaining your grass, which in my case, how much I fertilize, water, and my climate means I have to cut every 3 days is kind of the maximum to be at an acceptable height for this thing to do a good job. Otherwise, you're gonna have to go over it multiple times to get it back into line, which it's just part of the design of this type of mower. I do have to say I'm tempted by kind of the new generation of robot mowers that are coming out that have actual lawnmower blades on them with lift to create that airflow and lift the grass up and engage and cut. That would allow me to cut this higher and still have a nice looking lawn, where again I'm limited and I have to cut lower because this grass gets some shade, it gets a little spindly, or it does not stand up straight firmly. When the mower passes by, it lays it down and then misses the cutting disc and then stands back up after the fact. But again, overall, still provides nice results, just knowing those are limitations of this mower. So hopefully in the future, I can test one of those out with the mowers. Limo 1 is one of those. The Yarbo also has a new cutting head with some actual steel blades with those lift wings on it, and initial results from those do look like they cut taller grass better. So maybe in the future I'll test one of those out, but for now the A3000 is doing a good job and I still like it. With this latest update, it does get my recommendation. The Sunseeker X7 still is better for its drive system, for overall navigation, and the obstacle avoidance is really dialed in on that. So the X7 does get an edge in that, but reliability has taken a hit lately. In year 2 of that operation, I did an update video on that. It had the wobbly drive wheel, and I've heard some stories from others where it hasn't held up, but hopefully their newest builds and they improved the design and reliability of that. But so far, A3000 performing well. I've had no reliability issues with it. I did have that overheat of the LiDAR sensor. So if you're in a place where you get over 90 degrees Fahrenheit regularly, I don't recommend it, but otherwise, it's been a good machine for me. Thanks for watching. Adios.